This is a continuation of the oral history interview with Karen Brooks on December 30th, 2021. You were talking about artemisia and spirit medicine.
Yes, during that time, I had been seeking spirit. So I was looking for who I was, what was in my blood, and when I discovered that I was Yupik, it was at the gathering of the tribes, every February in Fairbanks at UAF, and they would have the dancers come on. And I went by myself this one year, and I watched all the dancers. And when the Yupik dancers got up, I could feel it in my blood. And that's when I started asking questions. And I wanted to be that dancer up there. I wanted to know the spirit of the essence of my people. And so that started the journey in spirit work and such. I started making essences with plants and flowers, like Bach flower remedies. I studied that, and I thought, well, I can make my own, because from my studies, when you eat food that is grown around you, it has the nutrients in which your body needs. That goes for medicine as well. If you pick and process the plants that live around, that grow around you, they're way more powerful than the plants you buy at the health food store. So that began my journey into medicine plants and spirit plants. Spirit plants are used to help heal emotions, energy in the body. And I made lots of them, as many as I could. I just went out there and I made them and used them, because it works on a different frequency, a different level than regular, let's say, tincture plant, the chemicals from the plant itself. It's a higher vibration. You take a swig of a homeopathic. It doesn't matter if you take a swig or drink the whole bottle. It's not going to harm you in that way, because it's working differently, in a different way on your body.
So this is beautiful. You started to blend traditional Alaska plants with Western homeopathy, Western flower essences, blending the ancient and the modern.
Yes.
To create remedies for yourself, for your family, for your patients.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you would make an essence?
Well, first of all, I would have a crystal bowl. And I had a round crystal bowl. And I would go out into whatever plant I was looking for, go out where it is not around people, not around vehicles, just out in nature as far as I could possibly go. And then I would place the bowl underneath the plant. And depending on how much time, it would usually be about an hour, I'd leave it there. And I'd say a little prayer. I'd burn artemisia, Alaskan sage, and ask that the spirit of the plant go into the water. I would use distilled water. Distilled water is water with no other energy in it. It's just water. There's no other influences like iron or sulfur or anything. It's just water. And then to set it or seal it, I would then pour 1 part brandy. And that is what holds the medicine. So it would be 3 parts water, 1 part brandy.
You would label it with what information?
Ask again that question.
What would you label the essence with?
Label it with, I would just say, for instance, fireweed essence.
You would add more information, though.
Well, in my flyers, I would say what it meant metaphysically or symbolically. It would be what time of year, what phase of the moon, because I started including that in my remedies. That would be the oils as well as the tinctures as well as the essences, using planetary aspects like full moon, new moon, or if Pluto went into a sign which was particularly powerful, or a conjunction of 2 planets, or there was an essence that I made. It took me hours to set it up, and it was when the asteroids were hitting Jupiter in 96, I think, and they showed it on the television, and I prepared for that. And I prepared by setting up a matrix of crystals that were double terminated, and I asked that the energy from this particular event be put into this water.
That's beautiful. And so this is truly vibrational medicine.
Vibrational medicine, yes.
Including the plant medicine, the element of water, and the cosmic rays of our solar system.
Correct.
And as Yupik people, we are embedded in the cosmos, in the universe, in awareness of it. And you really pulled this all together in the work that you do with plants.
You know, now that I think of it, in my DNA, I have that information, I had this vision of, I think I told you, remembering when, you remembered, and it just is an automatic thing, I've spent my life freeing myself up to not go this way or that way because someone says so. I just go the way that, my inner self tells me to go. When to harvest, when to go and pick this, because it just is an automatic thing now to do that.
It's a knowing.
It's a knowing. And I think it's a combination of doing it every year for the last 40 years, plus the knowledge that my ancestors have passed on. Because in my search of knowing who I am, I would go and I would ask little old Yupik ladies, if they knew my grandmother. And I would listen and ask questions to any elder. When we lived in Manly, that's Athabascan country. And my job was to pick up the elders and bring them to the meetings. And then I would ask them, what would you like to do? And most of them didn't have vehicles. And they'd say, drive me down to the river. And so as we're driving, I would ask questions like, did you pick plants? And what did you do with them? And I got information from asking questions for stinkweed, fireweed, and different things. And I listened very, very closely. And the elders are all passing away. So a lot of information has gone. But it's rediscovering is what... It isn't dead. It isn't gone, because I'm finding that each family holds a family herb or plant that has followed them, that has not been forgotten, and that now is being gathered into books. Many books. There's like what, 5 or 6 books on Alaskan or this polar plants on Earth.
Thank you. Thank you for asking those questions. When you were young, you continued to ask the questions and talk to the elders and take the time to listen and to remember and to pass that information down to your children. And your children have continued to pass the information.
Right. And that's what it's about. Now, if the children today don't go out and play as much as the children of yesterday, and we used to pick spruce sap and chew it.
What is the role of plants in your everyday life now?
In my everyday life, plants play a very important part. I pick nettles. Nettles is a very, very special plant. It's so special. My herbalist friend Deborah, she always had nettles. Nettles is high in protein. It's amazing if you dry it and sprinkle it on food. It just looks beautiful. And nettle vinegar, oh gosh, it's really earthy and dark. And it's just really yummy, nettle vinegar. I make it both for using on salads to eat internally. And I also make nettle vinegar to put on your scalp because it promotes hair growth. It makes your hair shiny and soft. It's an amazing plant.
You use that every day. Your hair is beautiful and shiny.
Yes.
And so you have a harvest schedule, and that's part of your cycle of the year. You travel to harvest your plants.
Correct. I live in Manly Hot Springs, which is in interior. It's actually in the middle of the state. Nettles doesn't grow readily in interior. There's a few secluded spots that you can find it, but not to the extent of what I pick. I pick bushels. I have baskets of different sizes, and I would say like a clothes basket, I pick about 10 of those a year. And when I dry them, and I dry them. The first couple of years, I dried them in a sauna. I turned an outdoor sauna into a drying shed, and that was the fastest way to get the plants dried and put away, because yes, there is a time schedule there because it's right around the time of arnica. And depending on the winter, you got to pick when it's ready, because you got to pick that nettles before it flowers.
Why?
Because of the chemical in the plant. It is not good. So you pick it young. You pick it when it's about 12 inches and smaller. And it's a big deal. It takes like me about 5 days to pick that much.
5 days to pick, 5 and dry at the same time.
Right.
And process. Processing looks like cleaning the plant, then drying it, then putting it in bags.
And I put it in bags, paper bags. I don't put it in plastic. I don't like plastic. Paper or glass jars. Now, I pick for you. I pick for Molly. I pick for my family first. Then I process however, if I need more vinegar, I always make nettle vinegar, and depending on how much I get that year depends on what I'm going to do. Sometimes I don't get enough to make much of the hair rinse.
Thank you for your help in picking nettles. Mom also picks the nettles for our classes that we teach at UAA and other work that we do around the state of Alaska. It's such a precious plant. You might pick 10 hampers and it shrinks down to the size of 2 hampers.
Oh, smaller than that. Not even full paper grocery bags, maybe 1.5 bags is what that ends up. So 3 half bags of nettles is what it is. It's a very succulent plant, and you keep just the leaves.
And to clarify, you harvest the nettles before they flower for internal use,
right,
for food and medicine. At the end of the summer, if you're in a nettle patch, you can look deep next to the ground and you'll find fresh nettles throughout the summer and fall that have not flowered yet. It's just harder to pick at that time.
I think so. And we're so ready to eat fresh green food that, while nettles is in season, when you steam it, it's just as good as spinach steamed with, oh gosh.
Well, and it's, like you said earlier, more mineral rich, and it has trace minerals in it.
Right. Yes, it's very nutritious. It's one of the 7 sacred plants, and everyone knows nettles. Everyone on the planet knows nettles.
There's another plant that you work with called sundew.
Oh, sundew is a nice, wonderful little creature. You get to know each plant's personality by when you harvest them, where they grow, what they look like, how hard it is to harvest. Sundew is one of those little tiny plants that is a pain in the butt to pick, because they're only like an 1.5 inches tall, and it's not like you can get on your hands and knees because you're in a bog picking, so you have to bend over, and to pick a quart jar takes a long time. So you have to really be in that Zen place of patience. You can't be in a big hurry. You can't be you have to be really in a meditative sundew place.
Sundew is a carnivorous plant that grows in the bogs throughout Alaska. It's a beautiful red color, and it puts out a little sprig that's about 3 inches of a flower and seed.
Right. It's a very cool plant. Very little, and when you learn how to pick it, because you got to nip it with your fingers, or after it flowers, you take that stem and you can pull it right up. That's when it's effortless. I've learned that after picking. That's real easy, because then you don't have to bend over quite so far.
You'll notice that certain types of moss and certain types of bogs release the sundew easier than gravel or harder, more compact tundra.
Yeah, they do, because I think of moss as being loose, whereas gravel's a little bit more compacted, so it's a little harder because it won't pull right out like in the gravel as it does in the moss. But you still have to hold it really secure with your fingers. And what happens is you get the sundew. It's the dew from the the plant that attracts the bugs. Of course they would be in a bog. There's all kinds of bugs in a bog, and they get little bugs. And of course they would be right next to the blueberries because blueberries grow in bogs, so everything is related to everything. So I think about those things when I'm picking plants, is what is the relationship to, what else do I look for? Sundew is little. Blueberries patches are big. So if I see blueberries, I'm going to look for sundew because they are together, or moss or alder, or, there's things that I pay attention to in my head that I didn't know I was paying attention to. And I'll go, stop, let's go see if there's, because I noticed a big patch that looked like a bog. And there's sundew. I think you've done the same, with looking for plants.
I say there's 10,000 shades of green, and we learn to differentiate the shade of green that is raspberry plants, and there's a different shade of green that is nettles. So we could be driving 35 miles an hour down the road, and I'm like, stop, there's a raspberry patch, let's go see how the berries are. Check in on them, see when they're going to be ready. I do that with fungus too. My grandparents taught us how to identify certain culinary mushrooms, and I can see the shape of boletes or shaggy manes driving around. And
so there's a time, we're all, during the growing season, because Alaska doesn't have a real big growing season, you have to be on top of it, and those that do the same, you share that information. You call them, hey, I'm noticing that such and such is getting, is starting to bloom. Or
what's wonderful is now there's Facebook groups for mushroom hunters and for traditional plant harvesters to support each other in accessing these wild foods and medicines.
Right. There is a large and growing. It's growing. People are wanting to eat. They're becoming more educated on the nutrients of the food that they do eat, and people are choosing to eat food that is grown around them.
Farm to table, as well as moving plants from nature's garden and from the forest garden closer to their home and their home garden to start blending domesticated plants with wild food plants.
Yes, nature does that on its own, and transplanting it just moves it a little bit faster. Kind of like Johnny Appleseed, He went around planting apple trees. Well, we can go around and, what did I pick? It was, nothing is ever a failure, because if you fail when you're processing, you can just turn it into something else. And the arnica that I was drying last year, it turned to seed. I picked it too late. And yet I had these big, huge bag of arnica seeds that we gave in our package. So, and I gave them away. So I think of that, okay. Again, I shared the seeds, so hopefully there'll be a whole bunch of new arnica patches this year in people's yards, alongside the roads where they never grew. I'm always paying attention to what's blooming around me and when it blooms.
What are you noticing about climate change?
First thing, yarrow also grows on the side of the road. And it used to be kind of rare that you would find pink yarrow or even white fireweed. Now I'm seeing it all the time. In Chinese medicine, and my friend Deborah, Western herbalism, plants grow in large amounts naturally because they're following or preparing themselves to be used for what people need for the next season. So if you see a lot of yarrow growing, and I've been seeing lots every year, there's so much yarrow, more than I've ever seen, and it's indicated for lungs and colds and upper respiratory. And so I find that very fascinating that nature is trying to tell us by just being who they are in abundant. Use us, use us, use us.
Our old stories have been passed down, and it says, well, we live in a relationship with all living things. And
Correct.
This is animism. Traditionally, our religion is animistic, and we know and believe and experience communication between human beings and animals and human beings and plants. And so plants are part of our relationship. They're there to support human beings and plants. And then we as human beings also support nature through our work, our spreading of seeds and our harvesting of roots, which break up the soil and the mycelial network and help roots grow stronger, and the plants larger because their roots have more air and movement around the roots. So this is this reciprocal relationship that we're in. Blended the old with the new, and then we have these cultures from China and Western herbalism coming in. They're saying the same thing in a different way. It's this beautiful dance of blending culture, ancient and modern.
It is. And scientists are now saying, grandma's remedies are kind of right on. And also, to go a little bit deeper, plant spirit energy everything has a frequency. And so when I started to explore that, it was through journey into the realm of spirit, the spirit world. And so with that, we can drum. I can start drumming, and through drumming, it alters your brain. It also frees you up so that you can journey and find answers to questions that are complicated sometimes, and you can get to know the plant spirit too, as well as the animal spirit, and talk to your ancestors too.
And so as you heard these Yupik drummers and dancers in your 20s, and that inspired you to continue asking questions, and you found out that we are Yupik and this is in your blood and DNA, you did not become a dancer, you became a drummer.
That's true. Siberian medicine people, that's the word shaman is Siberian. But the medicine people of Siberia, they would drum and journey, and they would go up a tree. They would follow a tree into their world of spirit to get answers. And after gathering, I've always gathered information from every realm of anything that I've been interested in, but I've always been interested in religions and faiths and way of being, and I have found that being closer to the earth and being closer to spirit works for me because I resonate with that.
And this is our old way, the way of your grandmother.
Right.
The way of your great-grandmother was animistic, and our culture drummed and danced and fasted into altered states of consciousness together